That was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed.
Season 13 was quite the season to watch. While it was obvious to most of us that this was Simone's season to lose, there was so much going on every single week that it made it hard to appreciate the cast that we had. I mean, I don't blame the fans that by the time we got to the top 4, it was almost a landslide of people that wanted Simone to just get the crown already, while also having a track record that was really hard to deny she deserved it. Among that top 4, we had Rosé, the queen that was shipped by some of the fans as Denali's little lovebird. You know, I've never been one of those fans that was out there shipping queens together or being interested at all in their dating life, but there's actually a surprising amount of people that like to spend their time shipping queens. So if you're one of them, please let me know what happens in your mind to make you interested in that.
I want to get into your brain, so what's going on?
Yet anyways, even though there's a lot of Drag Race seasons going on in the world right now, for some reason I decided to rewatch some of the recent seasons. Coming across season 13 again made me take extra notice at Denali's run as a Ru Girl, which shows that when you harvest the talent of creativity you have, one can really shine through beyond just what an audience sees on their TV screens. So let's understand why they say Denali is hotter than a tamale. But before we start, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and follow me on Twitter at GreenGayYT for updates on future content. Now, back to the video. On December 9th, 2020, World of Wonder released the official cast for the 13th season of Drag Race. Being that this was the first season that had to be filmed under extensive social distancing regulations because of the COVID-19 pandemic, most of us were waiting in our houses with nothing better to do than to get some more Drag Race seasons in our life. They also, for some reason, wanted to go in line with the theme of New Year's, with the first episode coming out on New Year's Day, which on one hand was a weird day to start a season, but a subsequent great way to start off the new year 2021. Meaning that in 2 months, it's going to be 3 years since this moment. Let that sink in for a second.
I lost all hope today.
While I didn't necessarily hear the most noise for Denali during the promo period of the season, it was expected that Chicago queens tend to bring a high quality of drag to the show, so there was a lot to live up to in terms of past alumni. When I think of Denali, the first thing that comes to mind is how perfectly she was able to create a brand for herself, quickly building on her platform with the skills she had at her disposal. From the moment she had walked into that workroom, it became official. The Ice Queen had officially arrived, a title that she had come up with on her own. Yet that begs the question, why was Denali trying to brand herself as the Ice Queen? Well, obviously, we all know that she's a professional figure skater, as it's made apparent by the fact that she's wearing skates. But besides that, Denali was originally born in the state of Alaska, a place that tends to be referred to for its cold winter weather. Yet, that's not where the correlation stops. I found out that the name Denali is the name of the tallest mountain in North America that is located in South Central Alaska. Whether or not this is the actual inspiration for Denali to pick her drag name, I have no idea. But I feel like it would make a lot of sense. Anyways, queens that only have one name as opposed to having a first and a last name stick out to me. And on this particular season, we had many of those queens, including Denali, Rosé, Simone, Gottmik, and Utica. So then, here we have Denali, the self-titled Ice Queen that walked into the workroom in skates, along with an outfit that gave us the vibe that she was an ice princess. Now, on Drag Race, she claimed the city of Chicago as having been the birthplace of her drag career, a drag scene where years ago, Gia Gunn came from too. And just like Gia, Denali ended up opening doors, because when she walked into the workroom, she was the first queen with origins in the state of Alaska to compete on the show. She was also among the first pairs to fall victim to the lip sync twist that pinned contestants against each other, putting them in either the winner's circle or the loser's circle, having each of the queens that lost their lip sync in a constant state of confusion where they weren't actually sure how to act, while others just gave us theatrics and pretended like they actually thought they were going home. But anyways, while Denali certainly looked branded to perfection with her whole Ice Queen theme going on, there was one thing that would make her winning the lip sync very difficult, which was the fact that her opponent was Lala Ree, standing on that same main stage looking regal as ever. I personally am not sure who won this lip sync. I remember thinking they were both doing pretty good, but for some reason I did think that the judges would end up choosing Denali since she seemed at first glance to have a lot more depth to her drag character. So it was a nice surprise when they ended up giving the win to Lala Ree, while also inadvertently foreshadowing both of these queens facing off again by the end of the season. The lip sync between Denali and Lala Ree was probably the closest one of the premiere episode. Some felt that it should have gone to Denali just because she had had worn skates throughout the whole performance. But others just couldn't help but enjoy the vibe of Lala's interpretation of the song better, which showcased her being a lot more happy in her performance, while Denali seemed more serious and concerned with outstaging her competitor. Regardless, Denali was now in the loser circle. She was then shoved into a room that had all the other losers of the episode, subsequently being forced by production to choose which of the queens they've just met deserves to go home first. To which Denali first chose Joey J purely because Joey had worn chicken feathers on her outfit. What this means is that if you're ever trying to impress Denali, I suggest purchasing ostrich feathers or you might be on thin ice.
I'm just not a fan of chicken feathers. Kimura and myself, we're both in ostrich feathers, and she's in the lower quality feathers, so sorry girl, gotta go.
If you're able to manage to become a meme as soon as your season starts airing, then at this point it should be considered an accomplishment. What I will say about this twist is that it did offer the queens more of a chance to get some screen time, especially when it came to the queen that ended up going home first. In general, it felt like the loser circle that Denali had become a part of really did get close to each other very quickly. I mean, together they all lost their first lip sync, being told by RuPaul to sashay away. But on the bright side, they were all able to get their anger out by eliminating Elliot with 2 T's from the group. So at this point, they were all just trying to face whatever challenge was going to be thrown at them. This sets up the storyline of having the loser circle get together to show the world that they are more than just the queens who lost their first lip sync on the show. First of all, when it comes to this challenge, there was so many verses this episode that were very notable to the audience. And yes, Denali's verse was one of the catchiest by a landslide, but I also have a soft spot for Tamisha's verse too. It was also great to see them have a full runway show, resulting in Rosé and Denali being chosen as the top 2 for the episode. Whenever they play Britney Spears for a lip sync, I just get very excited, and the choice to have If You CK Me be the song was perfect for the occasion. Denali knows how to give layers to a lip sync performance, which is part of what makes it so entertaining. And having Rosé performing really added a perfect contrast to Denali's sickening performance. By the time the episode's done, the 2 groups are merged with each other. The loser circle is then confronted by Elliot for having voted her out the last time they were together. But nobody really cares, so they all moved on. I can't imagine being in a room where the other half is comprised of nothing but queens that won their lip sync on the first episode. But I will say that it was probably the only time where the 2 groups of queens that were being merged had an actual tension between them, thanks to the whole losers versus winners thing. Because on season 12 or season 6, the 2 groups just kind of pretended they hated each other and then became friends really quick. Although on the bright side, it finally meant that moving forward, queens would be getting eliminated, and Denali would have quite the journey ahead of her. Whenever I'm learning about a queen, one of my favorite things to learn was how they ended up getting into the art form of drag in the first place, because it's such an authentic moment where they really got to come into contact with something that was completely going to change her life in one way or another. Obviously, a professional figure skating career was Denali's main dream that she wanted to make come true, with her ultimate goal being to make it to the Olympics. While the latter didn't happen, she made it to the Olympics of drag, which might make you wonder, why did Denali get into ice skating in the first place? Well, according to her, growing back in Fairbanks, Alaska, there's not really much to do there as a kid, aside from hockey, figure skating, or drugs. So ice skating seemed like the best alternative. Eventually, she did end up moving to Utah in 2007 to focus on her figure skating career, which was clearly her calling because she's even had a history of performing for the Cirque du Soleil as a professional figure skater, which paved the avenue to get into some of her first main gigs for her career. That's where she kind of got into an environment filled with supportive people within the LGBT community that eventually led to her experimenting with drag. A lot that was shown in Denali's personality through the season is that she was able to take on roles as a leader and had a very good energy about being a team player. We saw it when she was helping choreograph the group number on the first challenge, yet her biggest detriment was a common occurrence for most queens, which was that sometimes she got in her head so much that it resulted in some of her performances in the challenges being affected. When we get to episode 4, by the time the 2 groups joined together, they ended up getting an acting challenge. Denali struggled to do the acting performance, and many of the other queens in her team weren't living up to the challenge either. This was disappointing because the queens from the loser circle had so much to prove as a unit, but ultimately the first 2 girls to be up for elimination are Denali and Kimura Hall, both members of the loser circle and also longtime friends from the Chicago drag scene. I know that Denali recently mentioned in her interview with Maddie Morphosis that she was very grateful with the way things turned out in her very first lip sync for Your Life on season 13, because she got to perform the song that she most wanted to get if she was ever in that position, adding that production did know about about this. So it seems almost like they were trying to set things up for her to succeed by providing her with one of her most requested songs. This is another example of how production's involvement isn't always as negative as it's referred to. Because let's say that they already knew that they were going to place Denali and Kimura Hall in the bottom two. Not only do they already know the performing skills of each of the queens thanks to their audition tape, but they also would have known that Kimura would have been in a full gown while Denali had more room to move around. So giving her a song that is right up her alley will give an even better performance. It was also a very strong way of starting off the elimination process of the season. Like, I think almost every fan was constantly rewatching the lip sync after it happened, just to get the rush of serotonin that you get by watching Denali constantly eat up her performance with every dance move. It almost felt like watching someone that had been dealing with so much pressure from the competition that they finally snapped and were literally just giving out any bit of strength that they had left in them. Kimura by that point had already checked out. First of all, it was really hard for her to get out of the expensive outfit that she was wearing. Even if she did, I think she knew that she wasn't going to be able to outshine Denali. So she went the route of just walking around the main stage, looking stunning, and enjoying her last moments of living her lifelong dream. Plus, at least she'd be going home to a queen with whom she had a good connection with. Within Chicago, Denali had already established herself as a pretty well-known queen even before she ended up in our screens. Her relationship with the Chicago community was obviously further explored when that same week that her lip sync against Kimura aired, she came out with a music video titled Chicago Drag Excellence, which featured over a dozen different drag artists from the Chicago drag community posing and dancing to 100% Pure Love, featuring former Ru girls such as The Vixen, Dita Ritz, Layla McQueen, and Detox, as well as countless queens within the Chicago drag community. Denali was paying respects to them in such a way that had never really been seen before. It also helped that the way the video was shot in itself had a lot of thought put into it. So it felt like such a good move career-wise for Denali to use the opportunity of taking the moment where she almost went home first on Drag Race and flipping it by taking her lip sync song and using it as an anthem to celebrate the community that had helped her build up the drag queen that she is today. She would end up inspiring a lot of other drag communities to put together their own music video that represented their drag scenes. For example, on Drag Race Spain Season 1, the first queen to ever be eliminated was the Macarena, who ended up making a music video to the same song, 100% Pure Love, and showcased a lot of drag queens from her home city, Cadiz, Spain, which is also the city that I spent my childhood years in, so it was pretty cool to see. I think a big reason why Denali's Chicago Drag Excellence video popped off so much is that it felt like for a while, the content we received from drag queens who ended up getting on the show tended to be repetitive. Like, they'll post high quality photo shoots, maybe come out with their own little review show, or release a bit of music. Which isn't a bad thing, but it does make it a lot more interesting when someone that does the complete opposite is able to engage with the audience through their creativity. I mean, that same season we had Tamisha Iman selling the most random bits of merch imaginable, so it's clear that being different can be a great marketing tactic. Yet her iconic lip sync with Kimura still reverberates with current topics of the Drag Race fandom. For example, I feel like a topic that has sort of become popular over the past couple of years is people going out of their way to call out performers that are, quote, nogging. If you don't know, nogging is a term to call out someone that is doing traditional dance moves from voguing but aren't applying the proper form, so they are technically doing it wrong. As recently as season 15, Anitra famously got called out by Aja online for not doing the proper duck walk, only for Anitra to ignore the whole drama. But it did bring out a conversation regarding the ballroom scene and people who aren't a part of it trying to take part of their dance. Denali pointed out in May of this year that she's fully aware that her method of doing her own version of the duck walk is not at all reminiscent of the actual ballroom scene, and that she tends to get a lot of respect from the ballroom community, hoping that in the future she's able to execute the moves with the proper skill. Regardless though, the move in itself is an impressive one to do. To have the muscles in your lower body to be strong enough that you're literally just bouncing around while squatting is impressive enough on its own. Denali's time in the competition by the time we get to episode 5 was one where she was once again left with having to prove herself as a contender. I know that a big critique for Denali's run is that it felt like the judges didn't seem to enjoy her all that much, which is why she tended to be overlooked or dismissed, which resulted in her ultimate demise. But I sort of disagree. I mean, she started off the season being one of the frontrunners, albeit she came from the loser circle, but she still ended up being in the top 2 for their first official challenge, and kind of ate up her lip sync, which doesn't get talked about all that much much, and it's something that I remember the most about her run. It is true that as soon as the two groups joined on episode 4, she'd end up landing in the bottom 2 after not doing a very good job in the acting challenge. And yes, she did have some good moments after that where she shined, yet I don't remember it being to the degree where I felt she was robbed. It seemed at times, at least in terms of storyline, that all we really got to see her talk about was either her complaining about not having ranked higher on a challenge, or discussing how much she loved and appreciated Rose. Now, a big subplot for the season was the whole Rose and Denali friendship that had a lot of fans shipping them together as a pair. Despite this, at times I began to get transfixed by the relationship between Rose and Denali on the episodes too. But not really because I was buying into it, more so for how out of place it seemed.
Are you connected to him? Are you guys friends? Do you like each other?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a crush on each other, or?
Maybe
A little one.
Don't get me wrong, they probably did get really close to each other, and while you're filming a show, emotions are probably running super high. But in my mind, it seemed more like a smart move to also get themselves a B-plot storyline going on for their time in the competition, where they could always talk about their affection towards each other to give themselves more depth to them as characters, gaining the attention from viewers and producers alike. This is something that I think was really focused on, for example, when Brooklyn Heights and Miss Vanjie were lovey-dovey with each other during the filming of season 11. Or Gigi Good and Crystal Method trying to show off a possible romance between them by teasing fans about it online. Nevertheless, it is a plot element that makes a particular pair stand out from the crowd. So if it is a tactic that future queens do on their seasons, I wouldn't blame them. As the season plays out, it's clear that Denali began to realize that she was plateauing in the eyes of the judges, because she was no longer winning any challenges, which is a dangerous place to be. To top it off, one of her favorite runways, which was her dressed up as a beautiful lamp, ended up earning her another safe placement, which only made her get in her head a lot more. Sometimes Ru girls say that they can tell when their time is coming soon, so maybe this was one of those moments. But I also found it weird that she had created this idea in her head that this was like her best look thus far, when in my opinion we had seen her showcase even better outfits in weeks past. Regardless, I do consider Denali to be one of the look queens of the franchise. Not necessarily for her time on the show, but just look at what she's been delivering on Halloween every year. I mean, in 2021, she, along with Utica and Kimura, dressed up as the iconic cartoon women inspired by a popular drawing that went viral online just a couple months prior. Or her dressed up as the mother from Coraline. But anyways, back to the main topic at hand. The end of her time on Drag Race came when she got to the makeover challenge. Her elimination on this episode was obviously really disappointing. Not just because she was no longer in the competition, but because she went home dressed in someone else's drag. Many felt Olivia's makeover on Denali was a lot worse than Denali's makeover on Olivia. But also, the criteria that the girls were being judged on this episode was kind of confusing. But I will say I enjoyed the concept of having the queens make over each other rather than having guests due to the social distancing rules. Unfortunately, after landing in the bottom 2 and performing to Shackles, Olivia was announced as the winner of the lip sync, and Denali had to officially be eliminated from the competition, placing 8th. This then led to Denali to go home and spend the next couple months planning some of the best bunches of content that the fan base would ever see during an ongoing season. Like, remember when Denali released the music video where she performed in ice skates in the middle of a real frozen lake that she traveled hours to get to just so she could get this amazing footage of hers in what would be her final installment of a series of content that she had been releasing as season 13 was airing. I was thinking about this video the other day, and it really set in my head the thought that Denali actually slayed the way she branded herself outside of the show during a time where lockdown and social distancing rules were still in full effect. So the aspect of making a name for yourself through the average way of touring and performing that queens usually do was virtually impossible. The fact that almost every single video she uploaded on YouTube during this time period has millions of views each proves the level of obsession that people had for her as the season was playing out. Along with that, by this time season 13 was long over, Denali did what Milk couldn't and was able to successfully brand herself as the ice skating queen. She even has a YouTube series of her skating with her guest on her channel, which end up being huge hits every time she uploads. So I'm surprised she hasn't been pumping out more of these videos. Yet at the same time, she's been super busy touring, so it makes sense. I feel like back in the day, a huge fan favorite of a season like Denali would have been constantly talked about by the fan base over the next couple of years. It's sort of impressive that even with not necessarily being in the center of the fan base's attention, she is able to sometimes come out of the woodwork and get tons of attention attention.
Cold as ice, hotter than a tamale.
What's more is that she's also opened so many doors. Like when she outed herself as someone that had a crush on cartoon characters when she was younger, something that inadvertently revealed a lot about my mutuals on Twitter. In all seriousness though, at the moment, Denali seems to be focusing a lot on growing her career internationally. I'm mostly excited to see more ways that she's going to subvert our expectations when she inevitably comes back to compete again. Subsequently, I'm not sure what All-Stars would entail for Denali. Like, I see her being able to exceed in a lot of the challenges in the same way she was able to do so in her original season. I mean, I guess her biggest downfall could be her acting chops, but even then, that's something that she could have strengthened considering the amount of experiences she's had since then. Need to remind you all that she actually really slayed her Snatch Game character, so she has the capabilities of being a good actor. Regardless, if you've loved Denali's career as much as I have, let me know in the comments what was the moment where you decided that a part of you was just going to really love this queen. I want to take a moment to thank my patrons. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Matthew Burns, Gay Uncle, Wendell Norris Realtor, Tyler Hendricks MD, Poppers Alberta, Sarit Tish, and finally, Natasha De Leon. In the Green Squad, we have Azure, Cayman Rider Furry, Franny Fishsticks, Edgar Allan Pop, O Nicole, The Only Sean, IJS, Jade Lee, Ashley Ivy, and finally, not a punch, but a keek. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter at GreenGayYT for updates on future content, and check out my other videos if you're new to the channel. Well guys, it's been almost 2 months since my last upload. I'm really sorry about the huge lack in content, but regardless of why I wasn't able to make videos, I'm excited to tell you that you're about to be receiving constant uploads at least for the next couple months. So get ready, because I've actually been spending a lot of my free time in these past 2 months working on many different scripts, and since I'm always changing my mind on my ideas, I've basically been left with so many scripts that I'm now finalizing so that I can make them into videos for you all. So stay tuned, and I can't wait to finish this year on a high note. To those of you who comment, thanks for your love, it means a lot, and for now, I'll see you guys next time.